I'm so exciting to be here. I mean, even though I would love to be in Lagos, Nigeria today, but that was not possible for me. But I'm very happy that we can at least interact a little bit through my digital version of me. So thank you very much for joining, and thank you very much for inviting me. So I'm very pleased to be here. I'm honored to have this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to see you in person anytime soon. So allow me to switch to and share my screen. I have a little presentation for you that I hope you might like, and that way we can talk about a couple things later on. So what meaning the World Innovations Forum, what we want to do is accelerate innovation and entrepreneurship. That is our goal. But there are a couple things that you need to know why, because it very much hits you, because you are the center of this in a very, very interesting way. So when we look into doing something anywhere in the world, and I mean, we're all connected globally, there are a couple things you need to know what we did in the past, and I come to a past again. We have run about 150 startup events. We had 6 successful accelerator programs, more than 30 companies, of which we have funded, we got funding for half of them. So that would mean a interesting success rate of 50%, and we're considered one of the most successful entrepreneurs from that perspective. So we got more companies that joined our program actually to funding later on than pretty much anywhere else. We had top performing startups that went actually international very, very quickly. And I come back to international because you will see and learn and understand, I mean, most of you probably do, that going global is not just a crazy thing. Oh yeah, we go global because everybody else is going global. No, there's a profound economic background for going global, and we'll talk about this in a second. And there's a last thing that I really want to share is about innovative thinking. That's something that actually bugged me for years. As people ask me, hey, Axel, how did you come to all these crazy ideas? I mean, you ran 4 companies. All 4 were actually disruptive. So how does this work? And I always had to say, I don't really know. I mean, it was just there. But I realized, just there doesn't really is an answer, doesn't really suffice. And I started to talk to neuroscientists who are actually working on this brain thing, which we have up here. And there's a couple of funny, interesting things. I mean, our brain, your brain, all of your brains, and my brain and anybody else's brain are basically the same. But there are a couple of things that are different, and I want to share with you that as well. So behind us, meaning the World Innovations Forum, there is a group of really exciting and extraordinary people. And I don't want to introduce everybody to you in this presentation, but you need to know that these are actually really cool people and fun to work with. All of them want to help, and so it's great to have a team like this in that spirit. Now, we talked about global, and if you want to do big things that I know most of you want, playing in this global market world, you need to know a little bit more about it. And here's a couple interesting things. So if you look at the map, and I particularly use this map, because here's a few countries in Europe that are so-called developed countries. Then there is the US, and I have to say most of the US is a developed part of this world. And then there's China, which is emerging, and then there's Singapore, and then there's Japan. But this is it. I mean, we have 200 nations on this planet, of which about 20 are developed, and about 180 are considered emerging or developing, and so forth. So the good news is there's a few trailblazers, so to speak, but in the grand scheme of things, there's not that much different. I mean, we look also in the difference in this point of time where we are now. If we would go back just 200 or 300 or 500 years ago, I mean, Germany 500 years ago, the people who lived there and worked there would be poor compared to where you are. And 500 years compared to 2 million years that we are basically working on all kinds of things with our arrows and bows, that's a tiny difference. Now, but we're humans are not necessarily happy with that difference. And so neither you are nor we are. And so this is why we try to close the gap. But the difference is not big. And this is something that you have to know. You have to know something else. So this is, a couple of heads from Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley was the furthest farmland in the US just 70 years ago. So in the 50s and 40s, this was not better than, any poor country on this planet. But there were a couple of crazy guys. Yes, well educated, but they had also crazy ideas, and they understood a couple of things that most of the people didn't understand. And that was that our brain is able to come up with crazy ideas and we can actually make it happen. So what they did, they built, like Steve Jobs built the first personal computer that could be run in any home. Now, consider this. It's a poor farmland. Who needs computers? Nobody. They needed food, they needed water distribution. They had the same problem that you have. The other guys built the chips. And so all of a sudden, out of stupid, crazy ideas, Silicon Valley became the epicenter of the developed world in terms of technology innovation. And I come back to this, but here's another country, Germany. In the mid-1800s, Germany was a poor country, one of the poorest in Europe. And there were guys like Carl Benz. You heard of the name Daimler-Benz or Mercedes-Benz. He was the guy who invented the car. Now, poor Germany didn't need cars. Poor Germany needed better horses, they needed better farmland, they needed better food. Then there was a Robert Bosch who built the electronics for Carl Benz's cars. There was Friedrich Krupp who worked on steel, Werner von Siemens on electronics and on power supplies and so on. Most of these products were not needed, but they built a $1 trillion economy, 200 years later. But that was the foundation. So we realized Silicon Valley was a handful of people. Germany was a handful of people. We looked further and we found Switzerland was a handful of people and France was a handful of people. And the latest in this development is actually South Korea. South Korea was the poorest country in Asia. And the legend has it that they have gotten funding from North Korea, which today is one of the poorest countries in the world. Now, South Korea had three guys. Lee Bui-chung, he built basically on the top of his father's trading company, Samsung. He built Samsung as it is today. Then Hui In Huai built LG. And then Chung Yu-young built Hyundai. So these three companies, three entrepreneurs, built the massive economy of South Korea. And that was just 50 years ago. And if you see this curve here, in 1960, this country was basically nothing. In the 1990s, it started with shipping and it started the cars, but the real kick would come in when they did the electronic stuff. Technology was something that everybody wanted. And so the learning is that the developed countries today started out of poorness with a few people that actually turned the entire economy of a country upside down. With that learning, we started to completely rethink development aid and how we could help nations to actually come to prosperity as well. So the first learning is all, not any exception, developed economies have been built on entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs like you. So there is no difference between my grandfathers or grandfathers and you. And there is no big difference between you and me other than you're down in Nigeria, I'm up here, our brains are the same. You want to do something extraordinary, I want to do something extraordinary. So there is no difference. We need to come to the conclusion that there is not. And with that, I think we have a super starting point to go forward. Because knowing it's possible is one thing, but making it possible is another thing. And that's what we want to help. So we have seen I mean, jaw-dropping entrepreneurs from all over the world. Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, like you, Nepal, Vietnam, and you name it. This, by the way, was one of the startup events we did here in Zurich. And we had a team from actually Ghana, Nigeria, and Kenya, and so forth. And if you look at the audience, I mean, this was just a snapshot. I mean, look at how the people look at this person who is actually presenting. I mean, you can see the, wow, I mean, what is he doing? What is this, what he's doing as a startup? This is amazing. I mean, everybody looked that way. And so we know, I mean, this was for me an exciting moment to see, you know, even though people make this difference between, you know, yellow and black and red and white and so on, there is no difference. The most difficult thing for all of us, including us, is to actually identify entrepreneurs in these countries. And believe me, we have the same trouble actually in the developed world. There is no difference. I mean, we do these startup events. We have hundreds of startups. I mean, we had 10,000 attendees at our 130 or something events. There are not 10,000 startups that all made it. I mean, we have a handful of startups that made it. So the selection process is not up to us, it's actually up to nature. And I believe that those people who really, really want to build a company and build even an economy, they exist in every country. There is no difference. Like we have in every country, we have leaders. In every country, we have followers. In every country, we have farmers. So nature has something in our DNA that works well, but we probably in the last 50, 70 years, we screwed up a couple things also in the development aid, but that is something we want to fix. So what we do is, and we talked about disruption in our business a lot, and you heard it a lot, we're trying to disrupt development aid, not because everybody was bad or stupid in the past. Nobody could really know. We had a lot of research in finding out what actually makes a successful startup and what makes a successful economy, and putting this together was a really, really interesting discovery. So we did not anymore ask, how can we help 3.5 billion people to thrive and become prosper, because that failed in the past 70 years. Instead, what we are actually wanted to do is we want to help about 5,000, and that is much easier. Obviously, these 5,000 to find is difficult, but we want to find 5,000 people building companies that create jobs, that create an economy like every other developed country before you and me. So, and with that, you can imagine what we're trying to do. We're trying to help companies, or actually teams, because company is just a bunch of teams, people. We try to help you guys to come up to develop, a cool company. And a cool company is typically based on a cool idea. And a cool idea may be as crazy as it sounds. And unfortunately, here's one of the other issues about development aid. I mean, you probably get funded when you have a better way to farm. You probably get funded if you have a cool way to distribute water. And this is all important. But I think when we look in the past, the most exposed companies were people who did something that actually nobody did need at the time, but to find the economy in the future. And so if you have an idea, no matter how crazy it is, if you say, I found a way to go to Mars and back within a couple of hours, and I want to build this company, then talk to us. And if you have a way to purify water, talk to us as well. We don't differentiate between super extraordinary or very, very meaningful and helpful. The only thing we're looking for is companies who have a meaning in their product. I mean, if the product would ruin Earth, we did this in the past 70 years, we would not be very interested. But if the product would help not ruin Earth, that would obviously be cool, right? So with our idea of disrupting the development aid, we're $4.7 trillion. I mean, this is an unbelievable, even I cannot comprehend that number. In development aid flew into the world and really didn't work that well. we are disrupting this again with what we did 4 times in the past. We're thinking purely different. And thinking purely different is something there where we found some amazing discoveries. And I just finished the book about it. The first thing is Homo Sapiens, we all cannot create anything. I mean, this is kind of when I heard this from a neuroscientist in Stanford, this was a bit disturbing because I thought, and I was told to be a very creative person. Apparently, I'm not. And apparently, we all cannot create. And when you think about it, it becomes pretty obvious. I mean, we have blue, yellow, green, you know, the base colors. We cannot create a new base color. We cannot. You know, we have tones when we sing or play piano or drums or anything. We have tones that create these songs and these music, but we cannot create a bass tone, a new one. We cannot. And you play this back and forth and upside down, we're not creative. But what we can, and this is where all our ideas come from, is we can compose new ideas based on experiences we had. So you see me on a screen, and you see maybe the screen itself, you see the people, and you may come up to a new idea saying, well, if we can do this, maybe we can do that if we stick these components to it. And this is the way we create ideas. And this is what we create actually innovation. We put things that got into our brain through millions, actually trillions of experiences, because every moment in life is an experience. Everything you heard so far may triggered already new ideas in your brain. You say, well, if this is that way, well, maybe I could do this. And well, this is what's motivating. So maybe we can actually turn Nigeria upside down and make this in a developed country within the next 10, 15 years. And the more people say that, the more likely it will happen. So when you then go back and say, well, let's find these people who want to do exactly that and then work together. Yeah, that would be a good idea. You know, it was created in your mind. And so with the fact that we cannot create, only compose with things that are in our brain, there's something absolutely stunning. And I think this is probably the most important discovery in the century, even though it's very new, is that we can turn this mechanism upside down. So whatever we can imagine comes from existing experiences. That also means whatever we can imagine, we can actually also build, because we build it with existing components. That means if you imagine anything, and this is so true as I am here, truly am, this is possible. So the power of innovation is in understanding how our brain comes to ideas and how we resolve this into a solution. So this is sort of a couple things that you should know, and you're all smart enough to understand this, even though you're not a brain scientist, I guess, or a brain expert. The brain has two halves, and we have all seen this, I believe. So the left half is the logical, the right part is the creative. The left part deals with numbers and words and can communicate pretty quickly. The right part works with emotions, with impressions, with excitements, with experiences that are very hard to communicate. So this is what we know. We also know ideas are composed of all of these experiences. So the left brain, basically the logical part, and I think I can screw this guy, this is actually creating composing the ideas. But it does it, there is a bridge between these two. And this particular bridge picks everything from here and actually translate this in words. So this is how the brain kind of works. But the first learning is, if we want to create things and be kind of fancy, the more experiences we have, the better it is. because the more experiences we have, meaning, you know, you see something, that's an experience. You see for the first time, I probably don't remember, but at one point in time, it was the first time I saw a car. I was a young kid. The first time I saw an airplane, and this actually flies. And then I remember that I saw the first time an airplane on the ground in an airport. And I saw how big this thing is and how many people are actually walking into this airplane. And then I realized this thing flies. And still today, it's magic. I mean, how can we humans build something that this is possible? So you may come up with a similar idea, and you typically withdraw from this idea because here's something else happening. The ignition of an idea comes from the creative part, from this one, and sends it over to the logical part. And the logical part says, that is not possible, sorry, and then you drop the idea. And this is the point in time where you have to train your brain to not let that happen. Because if you do, then, you know, the idea is gone. If you don't, because we're limited to the experiences we have, so this is really a treasure chest. So anything we can imagine, I mean, absolutely anything, can be made in reality. You cannot compose things into a new idea and say this is not possible. Actually, that is the only thing impossible, that the idea you have is not possible. Because the idea you have is composed of things that already exist. And if you take these existing things to compose your idea, it will be possible. So now there's one criticality, is you don't know all the details from what you saw. And this is when you overcome your barrier. When you stop your logical brain saying, no, come on, this is crazy, this is absolutely impossible. Well, it is not. If you imagine a prosper Lagos, you know, you have completely, I mean, every single street in the entire city is well paved, is totally clean. You envision, you know, nice buildings, you know, you may envision totally different buildings that we build today, but only if you see buildings and then compose them to something that you like. And then you say, yeah, that is what I would envision. I would envision all round globes, spheres, and, you know, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But if you imagine a globe, a sphere as a building, it's because you already have seen spheres, I mean, round components, and you have seen screens, and you have seen windows. So your building will have windows again. But you may have also seen things where I don't even have seen, but imagine that instead of the windows, you do this. You can only do and envision this new building based on the experiences you have. Now you can come to the point and say, yeah, but I have no idea how to build this. Well, this is the key to innovation. And so innovation has nothing to do with classical mechanisms and processes. It's all about how you spin your brain. And if it's probably spinning already, and I can imagine this because when I do this presentation, people say, you know, stuff I can't even comprehend it anymore. But just one last thing, you may not know how to build these components, but what you need to do in this case is you find people who build the components that you saw, and you melt this into a new composition. So that means you build a network of people and specialists and experts and builders and so on. And this is, at the end of the day, the entire process of just amazing and unbelievable innovation. And when I figured that out, so to speak, I always, you know, tested back with my own experiences and with my own companies. How could I build a completely disruptive distribution model? So that was my first company. And I had envisioned distributors who distribute products to their resellers and retailers and so on. Don't bypass them and don't compete with them, because that was a friction that was absolutely stupid in my eyes. My boss told me and laughed at me. I mean, he never did this before because he really liked me, but he said, actually, you're a great guy, but you are completely insane. This is impossible because distribution is an interwoven network of thousands and thousands, actually millions of people across the globe. You cannot change this. And I thought, oh, shoot. But I saw this picture of this distributor in my mind. And I thought, you know, if I can't change this, I built this distributor myself, which I did, Computer 2000. We had $25,000 to start the company with. Right and left, where we actually were physically in Munich, Germany. I had two distributors. One had 500 million in revenue and the other 800 million in revenue. And here I was sitting in a sublease of an old printing company in the 4th floor with no elevator and so on, and started this distributor. And my idea was, if they don't follow my ideas, they will vanish away. We had a hard time. I mean, the company was twice almost bankrupt because the first time it didn't really work out because our partners didn't believe us. Then we grew very fast and we couldn't finance the growth and so forth. But at the end of the day, it was a $10 billion company. And we bypassed 8,000 and something distributors. We were the 3rd largest in the world. And so the whole way from stupid idea in my mind that just, you know, some brain cells futzed around, so to speak, to this company, all it took was to find, like I said here, to find people who know these things that I didn't know and just grind through and never stop. And I never stopped. And so this is the story. And I have actually a couple more stories about what I did, but in the interest of time, I want to go forward with the presentation. So let me see, how do I get back here? Okay, I have to close this and then I can go further. Oh, can I? Or don't? Yeah. So when you look into your idea mechanism, so to speak, you need to stop your intelligence, meaning your intelligence tells you, okay, this is not possible, right? And so stop it and basically go on in life and build, you know, a perfect model. And when you build a perfect model, look back, you know, reality catches up with you saying, okay, but I cannot build it. Well, then pull in people. We have a couple canvases in this book, Innovation Paradigm, which I share probably with you online or later on. There are a couple other things that when you have this idea, you need to understand the innovation paradigm. It's a whole world in itself. So you're sitting here as an entrepreneur and you have this innovative idea. You will find people who are helping you, incubators, mentors, co-working spaces, and so on. You know already, criticality is capital. So you need a capital to actually fund this. But there's a couple of things that you also have to understand. I mean, there's nowhere in the world are these dream stories. I have this great idea, dear investor, give me money, and I do that. It doesn't work that way. So therefore, find your co-founders, build, you know, the bare bone minimum of this idea, then validate it with the market. Find out there on the top in the market if people like that. Don't worry about your idea gets stolen and copied and what have you. Absolutely don't worry, because if you worry about that, you know, you stop your whole operation right there. And there's 1,000 reasons why, you know, you don't worry, but I don't want to stretch the time too much. You get your infrastructure. So development phase, the creation hemisphere is down here. This is where the innovation actually happens. Up there is when you start to get your product into the market, you start producing, that creates jobs. People start using it, so they have the benefit from your product that they can either work faster, work better, work easier, work more safe. If it's a consumer product, they have more fun, or they enlighten it, or it's just cool to have it, whatever it is. And then you drive your product to export. And this is another finding that we realized a couple, month ago, well, it's actually 1.5 years ago, that this is the kicker to prosperity. And I share this with you in a greater detail. So this is, you see here, Liechtenstein, big numbers, Switzerland, and so on and so on, and gets smaller and smaller and smaller. It looks like the list of the richest countries in the world, but it's not. It's the list of export per capita. So how many export a country can do per human being in that country. And so the interesting correlation is that the more a country can export, the more wealthy that country gets. And this is even with other economists, they say, oh yeah, it's actually logical. Okay, yeah. So, okay, if I ask, have you ever thought about it? They say, not really, but yeah, it makes sense. Well, it makes not only sense, it is critical to understand why a country, for instance, like Nigeria, is not as wealthy as some of the other countries, even though, I mean, Nigeria is on the list on the right-hand side of all the African countries, pretty far up, but still the number of the export per capita is still, what is it, $497 versus 100,000 or 60,000 or 15,000 and so forth. So there is a lot of business going on in the country, but there is no export. Export meaning you produce more outside the country than you can consume. And our entire development as a human being started 12,000 years ago when we were able, and this was called the agricultural revolution, when we were able, through farming and better hunting, to produce more food than we could consume ourselves. And rather than throwing the food away, some people said, well, I'm not good at really producing food either way, but I'm good at building homes or building weapons or building pots or building a roof on a hut and so forth. And this specialization was based on we produce more than we can consume. So some of us can actually produce things that we have a better life. And if we get this better life product, whatever it is, a house or a better bow or a better way of doing whatever they want to do, they traded this with food. And so the guy who did that got food from the others. And the blacksmith built, later on swords and all kinds of things and knives and got food against knife. So building more food or having more food or products for that matter that we can consume brought us to prosperity 10,000 years ago. So if we continue that model, we need to export. And that is something where export comes in as ultra critical for prosperity. Now, one of my thinking was, Jesus, if we export, so there is one country that we swamp with stuff, but doesn't create a value. So is export not a risk that we take something away from these countries? And I realized, no, we don't. Europe is a great example. Europe consists of 27 countries. They export to each other tons of things every single day. And still the whole group thrives. So if I sell something to you that you don't have, and therefore you don't produce, and I can make it cheap, you could say, well, but then our production of that product vanishes away. And that's correct. The production of that product vanishes away, but not the production of all the products. So the deal in Europe is we get oranges from Spain. I mean, we don't grow oranges in Switzerland, but we have very good cows and very good milk and produce chocolate and cheese, and that we sell to Spain. So at the end of the day, it's the same trading mechanism. You produce food and I produce metal and pots, and we trade the pots against metal. We trade today basically chocolate and cheese against oranges. We trade chocolate and cheese in Germany against computer products, for instance, and so forth. And the more we're able to do things that are actually out of the ordinary, coming back to the cars and everything that people built in a country that was actually poor, brings us to new things and elevates the whole world, all of us, to the next step. So therefore, export is not only a good thing for the country, it's actually a good thing for all of us. So in understanding now the three things, export is a powerful play to go to prosperity. The way our brain works, if we understand, is we can actually produce and build anything we want, which is another extremely powerful understanding. And the understanding that the developed countries are basically just sort of 50 to 100 years ahead of, you know, whoever and wherever we are. Maybe it's 200 years, but this is a tiny difference. So if a country wants to thrive, they can do this by empowering their entrepreneurs to build things that are ridiculous, crazy maybe, and then go on in life. And this is what we try to help. So if we go further in this understanding, we also need to rethink the value that we actually create. So we have now 4 things. So being crazy, being not far behind, doing this with export, and now we understand where we create the value of what we're doing. Customer value, I mean, a customer who pays you for any product you produce is a value. So the customer sees the value. The money is not the value. The money is only the exchange mechanism. But they see a value in possessing one of your products, so this is the value. Then there's stakeholder value. If there's an investor and you do a lot of production and they get a return on their investment, so that's a value for them. And there's an economic value. If the country now prospers because there's taxes from the products that you're building, there's a value. So taxes is something that, I mean, I remember I had to pay, you know, when we grew our first company very rapidly, I had to pay $1 million tax. And I thought, $1 million. But my father was a smart economist, and he said, you know, Axel, I'm very proud of you. I said, why is that? I mean, this is crap. You know, I need to give this $1 million to him. He said, you know, you contribute to the economy of this country, and not many people do that. Everything we have, the streets, the lights, the gas pipes, the hospitals, everything comes from people like you, and there are only a few. And actually, you cannot imagine how proud I was at the end of the day when I delivered that check to the tax authorities. I thought, yeah, okay, this is really good. I mean, you know, I made already enough money for me, but now I can actually contribute to others. And this was an amazing feeling. I mean, and you know, I don't have greed in my blood, so to speak, but it was really cool. And so then we have prosperity value. When we export, then comes so much money that we can actually feed poor, we can help the ill, and we can build this economy that everybody is kind of taken care of. The company itself has a value, and the business owners at the end of the day gets a value, obviously, because they run a profitable big business. But as you can see, I purposely put the business owner to last. And one is, I want to sort of share with you, you as a potential business owner, don't take yourself in any way or shape up the list. Because if you do an amazing job, then you will automatically be a wealthy business owner. And if you screw up, you don't go there anyway. So you don't have to worry about yourself. Only worry about these other values. And so there is a saying, I think it comes from the Jewish people, you know, you can make and try to make as much money as you want. It's always hard. But there's an easy way to make a lot of money. Make other people wildly successful and don't worry about yourself. And that is very, very true. So with that, I want to finish with an initiative that we're going to go, Seeding Innovation 2020. We start this next year. Actually, I want to, and very much looking forward to be also in Nigeria next year. But we're starting it already in January, and we're looking for entrepreneurs who want to take the company all the way to the top. No matter how crazy the idea is, no matter how you feel undereducated or something, don't worry about any of this. experiences drive our brain and come up with ideas. You don't need any education for that. I mean, it's good to have one, of course. It's good to be able to verify plausibilities and so on, but crazy ideas don't need any major education. And it doesn't need any major money in the beginning. You will find co-founders and partners, and so partners comes in again, that help you build this amazingly crazy thing. And then you will need money, of course, but then it's also already kind of visible what's going on, and you will be able to get funding. So we're running this, what I mentioned in the very beginning, we're running this pretty, successful accelerator. This year in November, we run it for the first time outside, meaning in another country, and this is Vietnam. And we help the people there to run and continue to run the accelerator further. And we want to do the same thing in Africa. We don't know exactly whether it will be Rwanda or Nigeria or which country. It depends a little bit also what kind of help and so we get to do that. But we will do that. And there is bold vision development, team development, innovative thinking. I mean, all these components go basically for 12 weeks. And we try to work hard with you to get your company off the ground. And for that, the easiest way to do that is join our WIN community. WIN stands for World Innovation Network. It's a membership, it's free. We have a forum, we can communicate. We have entrepreneurship programs. We have innovation capital, an innovation capital network in the making. So it doesn't exist quite yet. But the interesting thing is we combine local investors and foreign investors in these countries where the so-called FDI, foreign direct investment, is possible, to be able to fund every startup possible. And we can probably fund any startup growing anywhere in size. So these are criticalities. Then we help with the experience transfer. So we share our experiences, which sometimes is enough to implant the experience in your brain. If I tell you what we did and show you pictures, that's all it takes. You don't have to fly somewhere to make the experience, even though there are experiences where this would be good. And then finally, we have this space program. It was created or let's say invented yesterday, and it stands for, I have to still learn this, is self-sufficient, proactive, what is it? The A is for ambitious, crazy. This is the most important thing, the C, crazy entrepreneurs. And the space program is, we try to get the most successful startups up to space. We may work with Elon Musk or with the Google guys together, or actually with NASA. Because in 10 years from now, some of you or many of you may actually do an IPO. And in 10 years from now, space travel is much more advanced than it is today. And so this is our program to get those life-changing and economy-changing startups up to space, if that is something you're interested in. But in any case, with or without space, I would say it would be great to join us, wiforum.org. For organization, and then /join, and become a member. And from then on, you can connect with people, and we can work together. And whatever you need, just message us. I mean, we try to do anything possible to make you successful. I mean, this is the whole reason why we exist, making young entrepreneurs successful in their country. What we not support is, oh, I want to go to Silicon Valley and I want to build my company there. You can do that. That's totally up to you. But it's not in the interest of our job, because the interest of our job is making the country successful. And there was a wonderful new TED Talk. I think it just came out yesterday or day before yesterday, from somebody who lived in Nigeria or was born in Nigeria, went to the US, Homo, I believe is his name, talking about not disruption, the whole problem of oh shoot, you know, getting money laundering and back and forth, and how corruption, that's the word I was looking for, about corruption. And I think his statement I can totally subscribe to. If we wait until this corruption is over, you know, we wait forever. If we can build a country that is prosper, corruption will go down and fade away, I mean, at the end of the day. And so we don't care about anything other than one thing that would really harm the work is if foreign direct investment would be disabled. That would be troublesome. And the only other problem is finding top-notch entrepreneurs. And if we do, we can change, I mean, almost whatever system to something that we all and you are interested in. What we don't do is we don't bring technology in and experts and tell you whatever our way of doing business. We don't. The only thing where we help is telling you things that are understood by scientists, like how the brain works, and things how entrepreneurship worked the last 10,000 years, because that's a universal mechanism. You know, when Egypt ran their country for 3,000 years in a row, was the most innovative country back then. That wasn't a Western thing. This was actually Africa. And then the guys in Latin America, the Aztecs and so on, the Mayas. I mean, and ingenuity is not bound to any kind of nature or any kind of society or any kind of skin color or religious or whatever it takes. It is a wild, wide distributed mechanism on Earth in human beings. And at the end of the day, we're all Homo Sapiens. And with that, thank you so much, and go on in life with your inventions and with your crazy ideas and with your ambitious, because that is what it takes to take a country around. It's only and exclusively entrepreneurship. There is nothing else that any of the developed countries made developed. It's entrepreneurship, and you're one of them. Okay? Thank you very much, and hope to see you soon. And till then, thank you, and bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.